Sam, you have clients in Bryan prison alongside Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, I know that all the prisoners have been told they cannot talk about her, but I know you've talked to some of their relatives. What are you hearing from people in the same jail as Ghislaine Maxwell about how things have changed since she's come in as basically a trophy prisoner?
I've helped many high-profile people. I served time in Miami with Peter Madoff, Bernie's brother. And the sentiment that I'm getting from...
that's a whole new episode on its own. I am dying to talk to you about that. But let's stay focused on Maxwell, and then promise me you will come back and let's talk about the Madoffs.
Absolutely. So there's two general sentiments amongst the inmates that are there. In many instances, when you have a high-profile individual that enters the facility, there's a lot of fascination. I've had, two people that are currently in the president's inner circle that serve time, and there's a lot of fascination.
Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro, correct?
Correct. And when they go into a prison, or anybody of that type of stature or fame, inmates tend to be very curious. They want to almost live vicariously through them. And many of the staff tend to be very deferential to them because they understand who they are and who their friends might be. In this case with Ms. Maxwell, it is completely different. They were warned, the inmates and the staff were warned prior to her coming in that under no circumstances are they to disclose anything that happens with her or to her or surrounding her during her time at Bryan. In one case, there was one inmate that told somebody, a journalist, something about her. And this young lady was a friend of one of my clients, and she had a very short sentence. Keeping in mind, prison phones and email are subject to being monitored. So for sure they have an AI system that is just looking for the name Maxwell. And as soon as this other inmate made the statement, she was whisked off that night to Houston Federal Detention Center, which is a maximum security facility. So
wow.
The sentiment is one of walking on ice. They're afraid, as the staff is afraid, to do anything wrong because they know that in order for her to have gotten there, the strings at the highest possible level had to have been pulled. And they see, and we can talk about some of the things that they're experiencing while she's there, from her visits to how her meals are being handled, and they're truly walking on eggshells. The other sentiment, which I find fascinating, is the inmates, feel that she is being treated more like a guest in a hotel than an inmate in a federal prison.
So she's being treated as a sort of celebrity prisoner, basically. She's getting special treatment. Everybody else is feeling nervous. One person who let something slip has already been moved to a harsher jail. So this is not someone you want to mess with.
This is, at least from my clients, they're steering clear of her. They want to stay as far away from her, and they're actually afraid to socialize with her because you never know, especially in a prison environment, what could happen, not just between the inmate and Ms. Maxwell, but between the inmate that's socializing with her and other inmates. It's guilt by association. And there's tremendous fear and anxiety.
So I know this is a much lower security prison, and we think of it as a camp. Does that mean it's much less violent? Are there violent prisoners there? Because, of course, one's mindful of what happened to Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, nobody knows. Did he commit suicide or was he actually murdered in jail? But the truth is, as anybody will tell you, and you know from your own experience, jails are full of people who are violent and frequently mentally ill. So is she... I understand it's lower security, but are there still violent prisoners in Bryan?
No. In order to qualify for a minimum security camp, you can't have any prior history of violence or a charge of violence. If you commit violence, get into a fight while you're at the camp, you are immediately removed and sent to a higher level security, a low like Tallahassee, where she had just come from.
Okay.
So there might be, we'll say gangs, but groups of women that segregate and stick together, but there are no gangs, there is no violence, you don't see any sexual activities that are going on in camps. A camp is community custody. As an example, if an inmate wants to leave, they can leave. Very rarely, the gates are open. They become a fugitive, but they can leave. There are programs a nursing program at that camp that is offered to inmates to get an associate degree in nursing.
Can you imagine being a patient and waking up to discover that the nurse peering over your bed at you is Ghislaine Maxwell? You would really think you had lost it. You mentioned a visit that someone had talked to you about and that was referred to in an excellent piece in the Wall Street Journal about conditions at Bryan since Ghislaine Maxwell was checked in there. Right. Do we have any sense of who this visitor was? Because the entire prison was apparently put on lockdown while Ghislaine Maxwell had a special visit from someone. Do we know who it was?
Not only was it put on lockdown, it was put on maximum lockdown. In other words,
so explain the difference. What is the difference?
So in a traditional lockdown, they still let people that have jobs, kitchen staff, food services, certain orderly positions, people that have certain jobs, they allow them out of the unit to continue doing those jobs. The lockdown is typically the inmates that are not working are confined to the dormitories. In this situation, everyone was locked down. The kitchen staff was closed. Everything was closed. It's my understanding that they brought her out to the chapel, and the only thing that one of my clients was able to see was that she went into the chapel, but whoever was visiting her came in through the back of the chapel, so you couldn't even see the type of cars they drove in on.
So was there any speculation inside this prison camp as to who the visitor was?
Purely speculation, and I have no way of confirming this, but in order to get a visit like that, it had to be somebody very, very high up in the government, possibly also with some kind of security protection. And keep in mind, I've had clients that have had very high-ranking government officials and family of government officials visit them in prison. And we had to make special accommodations for those visitors. But they still came in during regular visiting hours. Yes, they were given a separate room off the visiting room, but accommodations were made so it didn't lock up the whole facility. In this instance, which I've never heard of before, everything was locked down and her visitors came in through a back entrance so that no one could see who they were and how they came in.
I wonder if it was perhaps the number 2 in the Justice Department, Todd Blanche, formerly Donald Trump's personal lawyer, or one of his army of personal lawyers, who was checking in as a sort of maitre d', having organised her transfer of prisoners. Perhaps he was checking in to check she liked the room service. Can you tell us a little bit about what life is like in the prison camp there? You mentioned that you could train to be a nurse, but I gather there is a sort of in-house beauty salon that prisoners can go to and is run by other prisoners. What's
Sure.
the food like? Give us a sense of daily life there.
Lights go on during the week. At 6 in the morning, you're expected to get up. If you want to go to breakfast, go to breakfast. If you have a morning job, you go to your job. You make your bed. You clean your area. There are no cells. There are no guard towers. There are typically little pods that have a bunk bed in them. If you have no job, you're allowed outside, the running track, television, board games, whatever you might do. I believe there's pickleball there. There's all sorts of activities from 6 in the morning until 9 o'clock at night, except for what they call count, when they do a national census. If you have a job, you're expected to go to your job and when you finish your job, you come out.
And what are
There
the sorts of jobs that people do? Is that like working in the prison library, which is always one of those things in Orange is the New Black?
So I had a client, yes. One of the best jobs I can get for a client is what's called a library orderly or a law library orderly. Depending upon where they are, it's either better air conditioned or better heated, and they're in the library, they put books away. But it's a good job, especially typically for older people. There's a puppy program that the women can train puppies. They live with the puppies, and they train them to be service dogs. She was denied that program. There is an off-premises nursing program. She was denied that program. There are other programs, i.e. Cosmetology, that you're referencing, where women can learn some sort of vocational training so that when they get out, because remember, if you're in a camp, you're getting out soon. You're at the end of your prison term. So they try to teach women some sort of vocational training. In men's camps, they might have commercial truck driving and things like that. So it's a very relaxed atmosphere. One of the biggest problems in a minimum security facility is boredom. There just isn't enough to do. She can take classes. The other interesting thing, and I'm curious to know, is she getting First Step Act credits towards time off? With her sentence, you typically can't. But there are all sorts of exceptions being made. So there are classes like parenting, stress management, conflict management that the government offers to inmates to help get time off their sentences.